What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. Another weekend has come and gone, and it is once again time to discuss those good old box office numbers. We are talking this last previous week of November 4th to November 6th. One last final lull in the box office weekend while we wait for the absolute juggernaut of Black Panther Wakanda Forever next week. But before we dive into all that juicy good stuff, if you can, as always, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, drop some comments down below so we can always keep this gravy train rolling. And now we are going to dive into those sweet box office numbers. It was another slight dip over from last weekend. We are on a nice little downward tick right now before our huge up spike next week with Black Panther. We did not drop as much as I thought we were going to. I thought we were going to drop pretty hard again, and that this past weekend was going to end up being a ghost town, but we ended up only dropping 14.7% over the previous week, and in our top 10 collectively we took in $54.2 million. So not such a sharp decrease from the previous Halloween weekend that I thought we would end up having. It was a nice, almost like a little, just like soft little decline, but we are now about to dive way up starting next weekend. It was actually pretty dead at my theater this past weekend. It was the only thing that really did any business, as always, was Ticket to Paradise and Black Adam. The one new release that we will actually talk to about in a little bit didn't do anything at my theater. We actually had it in our biggest theater over the weekend, and our last show, our second prime show, which is a hotbed of activity on Friday and Saturday nights, actually did zero people for the Friday night second prime show. So this movie just absolutely underperforms at my theater, but it did pretty well, looks like, collectively, domestically, for it to have centered in somewhere in the top 5. We're going to talk about it in just a minute, but it was a pretty dead weekend, all things considered, at my theater. But let's take a look now at the chart, and we'll dive in and see all the juicy good stuff that happened in the top 10 this weekend. So let's, as always, go to the charts. Holding on to first place is nobody's surprise. I called this last weekend that he was going to hold on to it again. And Black Adam, in its third weekend, manages to once again hold on to the number 1 spot, joining a list that we are going to take a look at later. But in its third week, it drops 32.6% to take in $18 million to bring its total domestic haul to $137 million off of a $195 million budget. This movie, I thought it would pass its domestic budget at this point right now. But still a little bit underneath it, and I think it's going to be even harder in the weeks to come for it to get itself back over that. I'm sure in the long run, by the time that this movie does finish its domestic run, it will have breached over that $195 million budget, but that doesn't even account into all the marketing and all the other crazy stuff that they were doing for this movie. So at least here on the domestic front, it looks like it's going to be very tough for it to make its money back simply on the domestic front. Obviously, though, if we look worldwide, the movie will end up making enough to have put itself into the green here. But it just goes to show how important the entire box office is internationally and domestically when it comes to making our money back on these movies. Because you look at a movie like this, which was an absolute freaking juggernaut cost to make this movie, it needed to make some money back. I think from what I was reading, it needs to make at least $500 million to break even. Somewhere right now worldwide, I think it was sitting at just over $300 million. So it still has a bit of a ways to go to at least break even and start printing money. So it looks like it's not going to be the surefire winner that DC was hoping for, but this is definitely a step in the right direction for them as far as building that universe is going. So this is pretty solid for itself to make itself a nice reset there. So hopefully as we continue to chart this movie, it gets bigger and bigger, and it'll be able to at least recoup its costs and hit that break even mark. In second place is our new film for the weekend. It was the One Piece film Red. All the weebs were out and about to bring the nice domestic haul for $9 million. I do not know what the budget was on this. It wasn't anywhere that I could find that really gave a good budget. These movies have been doing very well at the box office this year. Every time they release one, opening well into the top 5. Used to be a time where you would release these and you would never even really see them in certain theaters. They'd be very limited releases, but now they've become such much a thing for people that they are definitely opening up in wider releases. This one was probably the least busy at my theater of any of the ones that they've released so far, with Demon Slayer obviously being the big, huge one. That movie did insane numbers at my theaters. It was busy for like weeks for that one. That one I chalk up mostly to the fact that there was really nothing in theaters at the time when that movie was coming out. We were still heavy into the pandemic days of them just really delaying all of the big movies, so you were just taking movies wherever you can get them. So Demon Slayer really just ran roughshed over that time period. And then I think we also got My Hero Academia was another one that did all right, nothing amazing. We got Dragon Ball Super at my theater for a little bit, and with each one it's gotten less and less, but obviously they're still doing well enough domestically that they're consistently charting in the top 5 and sometimes even being the #1 grossing movie for that weekend. So these movies obviously have an audience there. They're building that audience up throughout. These movies continue to make money when they come out, so I'm sure that this will not be the last one of these that we see end up here in the top 5. Dropping one spot in its third week is Ticket to Paradise, dropping only 13.6%. That's a pretty solid drop-off from a week-to-week basis right there. This movie continues to do well in the middle-aged audience. It continues to do very well at my theaters. It takes in $8.5 million for a total domestic haul of $46 million off of a $60 million budget. This is another movie kind of like Black Adam that we're looking at, where it's like here on the domestic front, it's got a bit of a ways still to go before it's printing money here. But if you look at that international box office again, this movie is cleaning up internationally. So it's well over the $60 million budget if you bring this movie into its worldwide totals. But here on the domestic front, it still has a bit of a ways to go if it's going to pass over its initial budget. Looking at it right now, we're in our third week with $46 million. We are about to have a just week after week after week of releases now through the end of the year. So I don't know how much more this movie's got in the tank, but we will keep charting here and ticking along and see if it's able to cross over from that $60 million budget. Smile is in fourth place in its sixth week, dropping 26.4%, taking in a cool $4 million to bring its total domestic haul right there on the threshold, $99.1 million domestically off of a $17 million budget. The movie actually also just crossed $200 million worldwide. This movie is an absolute success. This movie is printing money hand over fist, and hopefully it's got one more week left in it to pull in some money, and I think it is now a foregone conclusion that next week we will be adding Smile to the coveted $100 million domestic blockbuster status chart. And then rounding us out in the top 5 is Pray for the Devil in its second week, dropping 46.1%, taking $3.8 million in for a total domestic haul of $13.6 million off of a $7 million budget. So this movie will have ended up making a nice little bit of profit for it. This is one of those good things where this is why it pays to make these movies so low budget, because even a movie as critically reviled as Pray for the Devil looks like it's going to not only end up breaking even, but making a bit of chump change for itself. This movie is absolutely barren at my theater. The only people that you get coming to it are the teenagers that can't get into any of the R-rated movies, so they settle for seeing Pray for the Devil. So I wonder how much of this money is simply from the kids and teens that can't get into the R-rated movie and just end up going to see Pray for the Devil. But whatever the case may be, they made some money off of it. It looks like they're breaking even, which is something that most of these movies that we're looking at right here, with the exception of a few, aren't always able to say. So good for you, Pray for the Devil. Taking a look at the back 5 in number 6, Lyle Lyle Crocodile, still holding on in number 6. In its 5th week, finally manages to go positive. It is plus 22.6% over last week. It takes in $3.3 million to bring its total domestic haul to $36 million off of a $50 million budget. I don't know what happened this past weekend, if people just suddenly, all the families just suddenly were like, hey, it's time to go see Lyle Lyle Crocodile. But they went out in droves. My theater actually, for the majority of Lyle Lyle being in theaters, we got a few rentals where people would buy out theaters so that they could watch this movie, but you didn't really get a lot of people in the public shows for it. I was lamenting week after week about how this movie was not finding an audience, and it was shameful because it was such a fun family movie. And then suddenly this past weekend, each prime show on Friday and Saturday night this past weekend did an upwards of almost 50 people. Like suddenly everybody was just showing up and was like, this weekend, I gotta fucking see Lyle Lyle Crocodile. And I'm here for it. Thank you guys for going out and checking it out, and I hope you enjoyed it. It's slowly inching its way towards hopefully breaking even at 50 million right there. I don't know if it's got the goods, because once again, we don't know how much they throw into the marketing costs for these movies. But it looks here on the domestic front, this one, much like Ticket to Paradise and Black Adam, where it struggles a little bit on the domestic front. Hopefully it's making enough money worldwide where it's at least made a bit of its budget back and is at least printing a little bit of money. But here domestically, it is not holding up to snuff, and it is struggling to get itself over that initial budget. Then we got in number 7, debuting here on the chart, The Banshees of Inisherin. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Apologies if I am. But in its third week, it is opening up into much wider releases, which is why we see it going positive here, 274.1%. This movie obviously being released in many limited theaters, and it has now expanded its scope into a much wider release. It takes in $2 million to bring its total domestic budget to $300 million off of a $15 million budget. So this movie still also has a ways to go before it makes a little bit of money back, but it looks like this one will not have as far to go as most movies will in recouping its costs, especially now that it's getting that positive word of mouth and the movie is opening in more theaters. I'm sure that this movie is going to be able to accrue it over time and hopefully make its budget back. I am actually going to go check this movie out tomorrow. I've got the next 2 days off, so I plan on going and seeing this and Tar. So I'm super excited to go check these movies out. Freaking love myself some Brendan Gleeson and some Colin Farrell, and especially with it coming from the writer-director of In Bruges, which is reteaming all these guys together, and also 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I am super excited to check out this man's new movie. In number 8, we have Till in its 4th week, dropping 31.6%, taking in $1.8 million to bring its total domestic haul to $6.5 million with a budget that we are unable to figure out. This movie also slowly making itself some money. I'm sure in its format with the way it was filmed, I'm imagining the budget was not that astronomical for it. If I had to guess, I would imagine it's probably kind of along the lines of The Banshees of Inisherin, where maybe it's 15, 20 at the absolute max. If I really had to guess, there's no really big name stars in this movie, so I managed the budget was able to maintain itself into a point where it didn't really blow out of proportions. So hopefully this movie is well on its way to breaking even and making itself some green. Then we got in number 9, probably spending its last week on this top 10 chart, is Halloween Ends in its 4th week, dropping another insanely 65.5%. It takes in $1.4 million to bring its total domestic budget of $63 million off of a $33 million budget. So even though this movie has been critically reviled and bashed, and everybody who loves the Halloween franchise can't stand it, and all the hoopla you've heard of it, this movie actually looks like it'll make a decent little bit amount of money off of itself. Again, as always, we always talk about, we don't know what the marketing cost was for a movie like this, but 63 off of a $33 million budget, that's a pretty good number to enjoy right there, at least if you want to make a little bit in your return. And then whatever this movie's been able to make internationally, it's just icing on the cake there. So regardless of anybody's thoughts on this movie, it's at least been able to make a little bit of money back on itself. But I'm sure this is going to go down as one of the wildest box office tales for the finish of a finale that we've seen here in the Halloween franchise thus far. And then rounding us out in the top 10 is another movie that I imagine is probably spending its last week here in the top 10, and it is the movie Terrifier 2 in its 5th week. For the first time since it's been in the top 10, it actually has a negative percentage. It has dropped 35.9%, taking in $1.2 million to bring its total domestic haul to $9.8 million off of a $250,000 budget. That is insane. This movie is just absolutely printing money. I actually watched the first Terrifier for the first time the other day, thinking that maybe I'll actually go out and give this movie a shot. I don't know if I'm going to do that now, because I'm gore, violent horror movies like that are not really my bag. I'm much more story over style. And this movie, or at least the first, I don't know about Terrifier 2 because I haven't seen that, but Terrifier 1, it feels like a movie kind of like what it reminds me of, like Hostel, where it's just kind of like torture porn. It's something where they're just like, I want to make something as vile as I can, and story kind of takes a back seat to that. And Obviously, there's merit and stuff like that. I can understand why people would enjoy the shit out of these movies. But I'm not the biggest horror fan to begin with, so obviously, like, your bang for your buck's going to vary based on what you look for in your types of movies. So these ones just aren't really for me. I managed to make it through the entire Terrifier. Like, I'm not somebody who's going to be like queasy or get sick watching it or anything, but just one of those ones watching it where I'm just like, what am I watching? Like, this is just vile for vile's sake. Like, it just felt like it was just being violent to be violent and be as like insanely graphic as it possibly can. And again, if that's your bag, if that's something that like interests you in your horror movies, all the more power to you. It's just not simply something for me. So I don't know if I'm going to actually go out and watch Terrifier 2 now, especially with that runtime. I don't know if I couldn't even stomach the 80-minute runtime of the first one. So I don't know if 2 hours and 28 minutes is really going to put me over the edge for that. Especially every time I pass the theater when it's playing, like when I'm at work, and I just hear the graphic violence just coming from it. It just puts me more and more that I'm probably never going to watch this movie. Maybe when it comes out, you know, I can watch in there and I'll give it a shot. But I don't see myself getting out the theaters. I wanted to try simply because this movie is getting so much buzz and so many people are raving about it. But I just don't think I'm going to be able to pull myself in there and actually be able to do it. As always, we like to take a look both on the domestic and worldwide front for our top 10s for the year. We first take a look here at the top 10 worldwide for 2022. We are probably here at our last week where there is no change in the 2022 box office. We are just adding on totals, but we are about to get a major shakeup next week, I imagine. I imagine we're going to see Black Adam joining the throes here of the top 10 worldwide, and I wouldn't be surprised based on how well Black Panther does if we end up seeing this debuting immediately right in the top 10 after its a 3-day opening weekend. But let's take a look here at the chart and see our top 10 worldwide at the moment. As always, you got Top Gun Maverick right there in the number 1 seed with $1.486 billion. The question remains now to watch to see, will Black Panther be able to top that, or is it going to end up settling for second or maybe even third place? Will it have the juice to join the $1 billion club? We've still only had 3 movies do it since the pandemic started. Will Black Panther be the 4th? Rounding us out, though, after that, we got Jurassic World Dominion in second place with $1 billion. Doctor Strange in third with $955 million. Minions Rise of Gru right behind that with $936 million. The Batman with $770 million. Thor Love and Thunder with $760 million. Watergate Bridge at $626 million. Moon Man at $458 million. Fantastic Beasts Secrets of Dumbledore with $405 million. And Sonic the Hedgehog 2 enjoying what will most likely be its final week in this top 10 with $401 million. We also take a look here at our domestic front where once again we finally have a shakeup here. We didn't get one in the worldwide, but we do have a shakeup here in the top 10 domestically, which I'm sure it's going to continue next week when we add Black Panther to this party. But let's take a look here at the chart and see what shakeup we had here. Obviously, there's still no change in the number 1 seed with Top Gun Maverick at $716 million. Doctor Strange right behind that with $411. Jurassic World Dominion with $376 million. The Batman right behind that with $369 million. Minions literally a hair behind Batman right now with $369,175,000. These movies are a few $100,000 apart from Minions taking over the Batman. Does it have it in it? I didn't even know there are still theaters that have the Minions. It's been out for a while. I've got it. I've seen people. I don't know who still has this movie, but does it have that last 200,000 or so to overtake the Batman? We're going to have to wait and see, but maybe we'll see it. It might happen next week, depending on who still has the Minions. It's an entire possibility that we could be watching the Minions overtake Batman next week. But right behind Minions, we've got Thor Love and Thunder with $343 million. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 right behind that with $190 million. Elvis with $151 million, Uncharted with $148, and knocking Nope out of the list, joining the top 10 domestic, is Black Adam with $137 million. Welcome to the top 10 domestic, Black Adam. Let's see how high up you raise into these charts. I'm sure you're probably going to pass Uncharted, maybe even Elvis. Do you have it in it to cross the 200 million threshold? That remains to be seen. You got a lot of competition coming in the next few weeks, but we will be right here charting it for you and seeing just how high you fly. Now, as always, before we get into our last chart, we like to take a look at our fallen heroes. Those are our heroes that spent their time in the top 10, but have now done their service, bowed out, and are on to greener pastures. We take a look here at the chart where we have two movies that have dropped out of the top 10. Taking a look here, The Woman King finally drops out of the top 10 after 7 weeks in the top 10. That is a very impressive showing for them. That is a movie that I did not think would spend that much time on the top 10 and made a very respectable amount of money for the movie that it was. I was super excited to see that this movie did as well as it did. Very good for you, The Woman King. And then on the other side, we've got Tar, which spent only one solitary week in the top 10. My friends, you have done your business. You did your time. You made your money. You staked your claim. You are now on to the greener pastures of streaming and physical media. We will see you when you come out on physical media. And until then, we salute you. And last but not least, we take a look at one last chart. That is our movies that have been able to hold the #1 spot for more than 1 week consecutively in 2022. Black Adam, we know last week did it, where it did it for 2 weekends in a row, but this weekend it joins the illustrious three-peaters, the Hat Trick Boys. There is only 3 movies this year that have been able to pull off that hat trick of 3 consecutive weeks at the #1 spot. Granted, they have all been superhero movies, thus continuing to prove that as much fatigue as everybody likes to talk about in the superhero genre, it is still reigning supreme. So we take a look here at this chart, and if we look, we've got all the movies that we've seen from the previous weeks. I won't run down every single one of them again for you, but we will take a look at our three-peaters. The Batman did it back in March, holding on to those weekends of March 4th, March 11th, and March 18th. Doctor Strange did it right after them with March, with May 6th, May 13th, and May 20th. And Black Adam now joins the party, holding on for the three-peat weekend of October 21st, October 28th, and November 4th. I don't know if we're going to get any other movies that are going to be able to do that for the rest of this year. Well, actually, I think there's really only two movies, obviously, which we all know about. It's either Black Panther and Avatar are the 2 huge movies to now watch for the rest of the year. Black Panther comes out next week. I think it's absolutely going to obviously win next week. I don't think anything else is stupid enough to come out the same weekend as that movie. So it's obviously going to debut #1. The question will be, is how many weeks after it is it going to be able to hold on to it? Because the following week, obviously, I think it'll be able to at least do a 2 consecutive one. I don't know if it'll be able to get the hat trick, though, because the week after that is Thanksgiving weekend, where we are getting another slew of a bunch of movies that are coming out, a lot of big heavy hitters that are coming out that we're going to take a look at. I think it's still going to be able to do it. I don't think anything is really going to take away from it right there. I mean, it all depends, because sometimes you could see, it depends on what the legs and staying power of Black Panther has. Now, if we get a movie like the first Black Panther where it's just going to tear through, then I absolutely think it'll be a three-peater. But if it ends up being like a lot of these other Marvel movies that this past year that we've gotten, or at least in the phase 4 that we've gotten, where they've been very front loaded, where they do a lot of big business up front and then they kind of just peter off as other big movies come in, it might not be able to do it. Although there isn't really a lot coming out Thanksgiving weekend that I see putting up the numbers that Black Panther is going to put up. I think Thanksgiving weekend is the Disney animated Strange World, which from what I've been reading seems like they're preparing for it to not make a lot of money, which is insane, because normally that movie, like whatever the Disney animated movie coming out Thanksgiving weekend, used to be a sure bet #1 seed right there. So it's crazy that that's not in contention right now, that Disney is completely expecting it not to be the case. So that's going to be super interesting to watch. We also get the limited release of the Knives Out sequel that's coming out over Thanksgiving in a lot of theaters. That might be a huge incentive to get people out to go see this movie that want to see it in theaters. I don't know, though, if it's coming out in enough theaters that it would be able to put up enough of a front to beat Black Panther. And then the other movie, big movie coming out, I believe, is The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg's ode to his childhood. But that's a movie that I don't think is going to end up putting up numbers that might even beat any of the other ones. That's a movie that I feel like is going to have a nice, slow, steady legs at the box office, but nothing that's going to be that insanely big that it's going to put up numbers to contend with superhero movies. So it's entirely possible that Black Panther might pull a 4-weekender, be the first movie of the year to pull a 4-weekender, because if it takes that Thanksgiving weekend, it's absolutely taking the weekend after that, which is like the quietest weekend of the year, which is the one in between Thanksgiving and then whatever the big Christmas movie is that's going to come out, which obviously is going to be Avatar. And then the question will be is how many weeks is Avatar going to hold on to? Obviously, I think it'll hold. I think Avatar is going to hold. When Avatar comes out on the 16th, I think it's holding on to the #1 spot every weekend for the rest of the year. I don't know how many weekends there are left. I don't know if it's 2 or 3 weekends that are left after it debuts. I think it might be 2, so I think the most that it can do for 2022 would be a 3-peater. So that'll be interesting to see. Will Black Panther be able to be the winner of the year and pull out a 4-weekender, or is it going to settle for a 3-weekender or even a 2 if somebody pulls out a big hat trick over Thanksgiving? So it's going to be interesting to watch. These next 2 months of the box office are going to be so interesting and wild to watch. And then overall, I think Avatar will end up being the big one consecutively, simply because we're going to go into 2023 and there is nothing really coming out in January of 2023. So I think Avatar is just going to run roughshod over the winter. But obviously then those transfer over to 2023, so we can't really count it as here with 2022. Obvious though, when Avatar sets its time in the sun and finally leaves theaters, we will watch and see how many consecutive weekends it held on to. But the most it can do here in 2022, I believe, is 3, maybe 4, depending on how many weeks are left after it releases. But it's going to be a wild ride to sit back and watch. And that'll do it for us here at the charts. Another wonderful weekend in the box office where we can take a look here. A lot of fun stuff that's going on. Movies inching closer to their $100 million box office champion. Then we've got movies jumping into the top 10 domestic. A lot of little fun little things going on that are setting the stage for one wild last 2 months here at the box office. Obviously, this weekend is the huge upcoming release of Black Panther. And you bet your ass we're going to be here next week talking about all those good, juicy numbers that Black Panther is going to put up. We will be watching it during the week this week. At my theater, we get, obviously, one of the perks is that we get to see movies before they come out, whenever they come in. So we're obviously going to get to see Black Panther before it comes out. My thoughts on the movie will not be in any format before the movie actually comes out or anything, because I don't really do review videos or anything like that. You don't need to, I don't like to come on, like, if I I talk a little bit about it, but I don't like to come on and just immediately shit on movies. Like, I know I don't like superhero movies, but I don't want to just take an easy win here and just make superhero videos where I can just shit on every single one of them, because it's not. I try to be as positive as I can with these things, because even any movie that I watch, there's always positives to be gleaned from them, even if they're movies that I don't really enjoy as much. I always tend to try and look for any positive that I can in there, even if I do have a bunch of negatives to the movie. So I've never been one who really likes to do reviews about movies. I might do introspectives about some of my favorite movies coming up. I might do one of those. But as far as just doing outright reviews of movies, I don't really have the time. I've got so much other stuff going on in my life, between work and going and traveling and dealing with house stuff and just liking to do other things. I have a writing career that I spend the majority of my time on. This is mostly just a hobby for me, so I never really go diving into too much on here. I mostly keep it to the numbers and taking a look at this lovely collection that you see behind you. But if that's something that would be interesting to you, let me know down in the comments below if you'd like me to do. Maybe I wouldn't do long ones, but maybe I can do quick short ones there where I talk a little bit about these movies that I go out and see, and we give them a little bit of a review for you. But that is up for you guys to decide. But that'll be all in the future. This is the end of this video. Until next time, you have been you, I have been me. These are the movies we love so much. Let me know down below what you thought of any of the movies you saw this past weekend, how pumped you are for Black Panther this upcoming weekend. And until next time, adventure on.